Alright, let's do this slideshow. Alright, what's up, guys? Today I'm bringing you my updated tier list for post-patch 1.21. If you're new to the channel, you don't know who I am, my name is Cbrev. I am a 4 times top 50 player in MLB The Show 19 this year, and I am also around anywhere between 10 and 15 on the lifetime leaderboards given the day. So that's once again not to gloat, but to kind of put into perspective that I generally know what I'm talking about when it comes to power levels of cards in Diamond Dynasty this year. This tier list was much requested because of the huge patch that SDS dropped. If you didn't know, in patch 1.21 they made it so pitchers' home runs per 9 stat no longer affected exit velocities in online games, which is a pretty huge deal. And so I kind of want to break down a couple things before I actually get into it. The first one being that obviously today is September 30th, so both the 8th inning program and the finest cards have not dropped yet as of the recording of this video, so you will not see them in the tier list until probably a month from now, when I have tried most of them out and can give you some opinions on them. I also do card reviews on the channel if you're interested in that. But as far as the patch changes, I think it's important to note that most things did not change with hitters. The only real changes I've seen with hitters are the ones that have insane stats that were underperforming. So you'll see guys like Mike Piazza have moved up on the tier list. I have generally seen Ken Griffey Jr. and Lou Gehrig perform much better post-patch, so Frank Thomas as well. So guys that have generally insane hitting stats seem to be performing better post-patch, but otherwise things are mostly the same from a hitter's perspective. I think everyone rose about the same power level from the changes. As far as pitchers, obviously some things have changed a lot, but one thing I keep hearing thrown around is that a pitcher with low home runs per 9 got better because of the patch. So someone like maybe Sergio Romo, I've heard people say Sergio Romo got better because of this patch. That's not necessarily true, it's relatively true. So Sergio Romo got relatively better compared to other pitchers in the game because home runs per 9 was one of his lowest stats, and now that's no longer a factor. But in general, almost every pitcher has gotten worse because of the patch. So Sergio Romo did not get better because of the patch. Sergio Romo got worse because of the patch, but Sergio Romo got better relative to the other cards that you could be using in his slot. I hope that makes sense. But in general, games are more high scoring. Pitchers are worse in general. And I do have some objective evidence on my Twitter that the patch did make some huge changes. I hit about 40 points higher and slugged about 120 points higher on my main account post-patch compared to my alternate account pre-patch. So that's just some data for you guys, and that's all I got for this intro. Sorry that it was long, but these videos are kind of just long by nature, and I wanted to say everything right out the gate. So as always, we'll just go down the positions, ending with pitchers, which is the most juicy part of this. So let's go. Catcher, as far as the key or the legend for this slideshow, green is going to mean that they moved up a tier. Red means that they moved down a tier. Orange means I haven't tried the card yet and I'm guessing where they're going to be. And blue means I have tried the card and they're a new card that wasn't in the previous tier list. So orange and blue are cards that were not in the previous tier list. The only difference is orange is a card that I haven't tried, blue is a card that I have tried, and then green and red is pretty self-explanatory. But moving up to tier 1, Mike Piazza, he still has a really slow swing, still pretty hard to get adjusted to at the plate, but man, if you can put a good swing on the ball, this card's going to hit 500 for you post-patch, I swear. Mike Piazza has also moved into tier 1 of guys that I can't pitch to. He's now up there with Kenny Lofton and Frank Thomas of guys who have like a career 970 average against me online. This dude's going 4 for 4 against me every single game. Mike Piazza's up there now too, but like I said, the knock on Piazza is his swing, but I'm telling you, if you can get around on one with good timing with Mike Piazza post-patch, the ball's just carrying forever. So I've also noticed Brian McCann has been better post-patch, as have most hitters. and obviously Jorge Posada is still good. I still personally think that Brian McCann is the best catcher in the game. That's my opinion. Obviously, you see Buster Posey in Tier 2. Doesn't have the greatest power stats, but like I said, haven't had the chance to try him. And then everyone else stayed put. First baseman. So don't be alarmed by the red of Frank Thomas. I just wanted to show the swap between Lou Gehrig and Frank Thomas. Last tier list, I said that Frank Thomas was the best first baseman in the game. I have now changed my opinion because of the patch. I think Lou Gehrig is the best first baseman in the game. Lou Gehrig on my main account has literally raised his batting average 40 points since the patch dropped. It just seems like every time you have good timing with Lou Gehrig, it's an extra base hit. The guy just absolutely rakes now. Frank Thomas absolutely rakes as well. Obviously, he's benefited from the patch a lot. But I do think he's worse than Lou Gehrig now because they're kind of on the same level offensively, and Gehrig is faster and plays better defense and is left-handed, basically is the explanation for that. Still in Tier 1, Paul Goldschmidt, very underrated card. And then obviously I think 99 Jeff Bagwell will be a Tier 1 first baseman when I get around to him. He's kind of up there with Lou and Frank, just a bit of a worse hitter. Slightly lower hitting stats than both of them, but still very, very good. Obviously, Adrian Gonzalez is free, and I think he's going to be pretty good. Another guy that gets shifted on, but his good timing swings go opposite field a lot, which is really nice. I just don't think he's up there with the Tier 1 guys. And then Harmon Killebrew, I don't know if he has the vision to get it done on Legend. We'll have to see, but for right now, he's in Tier 2. He's also insanely slow and has terrible defensive ratings, so that might keep him in Tier 2 as well. Second base, literally nothing changed. There wasn't a single new primary second baseman that was released, so everything's the same. Still Roberto Alomar is far and away the best, and then you got a choice of 5 guys. Won't spend much time on this slide because it's exactly the same from the last tier list. Third base hasn't really changed much either, aside from the best third baseman in the game being released. So haven't tried Chipper Jones yet. I did make World Series on both accounts, but I sold Chipper Jones immediately because I just simply could not turn down 600,000 stubs to kind of move around and make my team generally better, or for the alt account, giving myself more room to play with for picking up new cards and doing card reviews and such. So I obviously think Chipper Jones is probably going to be the best third baseman in the game now, but I haven't tried him. And then nobody else has moved. As you'll see, a general trend with the hitters, like I said, nothing has really changed with hitters because they've all gotten better in the same way for the most part. And then obviously the 95 Ryan Zimmerman was a headliner. Doesn't look too good on paper, so I threw him in Tier 3, but once again, haven't tried him. Shortstop, couple new guys in Tier 1. Surprisingly, 98 Pee Wee Reese is a Tier 1 shortstop, in my opinion. I hit close to 500 with this card when I tried him out. His swing is amazing. He's got the same swing that all the old guys in the game have, the nice compact two-handed swing where the ball just jumps off the bat. Doesn't play the best defense, but has good range. If the play's not routine, you're probably good with Pee Wee Reese. He just has a tendency to boot the routine ones sometimes. But in general, just a really good card. Very pleased with the Pee Wee Reese card. And then obviously the most hyped shortstop of the year so far, I think, besides Honus. 97 Jose Reyes in the headliner packs this week. I think that card has the potential to be the second best shortstop in the entire game besides Honus Wagner. He's orange because I haven't tried him, but man, that card looks really good. High 60s to 70 power, high contact, high vision, good enough defense, 98 speed. I think he has a chance to overtake Omar Vizquel for the best switch hitting shortstop in the game. So we will see. I predict he will be Tier 1. So nobody else has moved at shortstop. And then outfield, which if you didn't watch the last one, we pool them all together because it's just easier that way. So some new guys on this list. I do think the new 99 Vlad will be a Tier 1 outfielder. I'm not terribly concerned with the defense. Granted, I haven't tried it yet. But given the speed that he has, and given that his reaction is actually 77, which is pretty high, a lot higher than his fielding, I think he might do okay in the outfield, and his hitting stats look absolutely incredible. So we'll see how his swing is. We'll see how he plays in the field, but I predict he will be Tier 1. Looking at Tier 2, did try the 99 Dave Parker, wasn't terribly impressed, so I threw him in Tier 2 there. Also haven't gotten around to trying the Giancarlo Stanton yet, but I put him in Tier 2. And then Tier 3, I threw Luis Gonzalez in there after trying him because I just didn't think he performed very well. And then I don't think Johnny Damon or Jay Buhner will be very good as well, so I kind of just put them there. So not a lot of changes with the hitters. Obviously, I'm going to keep saying it, but nothing revolutionary really happened at the plate aside from some new cards being released. But now we'll get into the juicy part of it, which is pitchers, both starting and relief pitchers. How has this changed because of the patch? So let's start with starting pitcher. So Tom Seaver was released. I do think he's a Tier 1 pitcher in the game, although I think he's on the borderline. He's just barely Tier 1 for me. You could make the argument that he's Tier 2. He's definitely not as dominant as I thought he would be, mostly because I don't think it's very easy to throw his changeup or curveball for strikes without getting it hit 500 feet against you. So really you're just looking at four-seam or sinker slider with Seaver, which kind of is a bummer, but what can you do? And actually in this tier list in pitchers, I did rank them in order of how good I think they are in the tiers. So that means in Tier 1, I think Kershaw's the best pitcher. Wainwright actually moved up to number 2 ahead of Bob Feller. My stats with Adam Wainwright on the main account are getting ridiculous. He's got a 2.5 ERA through like 35 starts or something. The card is just amazing. And I thought Bob Feller may have a chance to drop down because home runs per 9 was one of his best stats. But the more I looked at it, and the more I played with him, he's definitely still Tier 1. He's got all 5 pitches that are really good. Really, his control is the only issue. But his pitch repertoire is so good. He throws so hard. His per 9s are insane. He's basically what Nolan Ryan should be if Nolan Ryan actually had pitches that were usable. So Bob Feller, still Tier 1. Some movement in Tier 2, which is pretty cool. I moved Zach Greinke all the way up to number 1 in Tier 2. I said in his card review that I think hitting pitchers have benefited a lot from this patch. Because it's a lot easier to take someone deep if you have a pitcher that can hit now with the home runs per 9 changes, and I just think Zach Greinke's a good pitcher card in general. Control and hitting your spots is especially important now because generating weak contact is generally how you're going to get outs in this new meta, and Zach Greinke's really good at that with his different types of off-speed. Moving up to Tier 2, 97 David Price. If you haven't seen it, go watch the card review, but basically he's the king of generating weak contact. Love that David Price card. And you'll also see 98 Madison Bumgarner moving up to Tier 2 from Tier 3 as well. Like I said, hitting pitchers I think got a huge boost. And also in regards to David Price and Madison Bumgarner, I think a lot of what was holding them back had nothing to do with the actual card, but it had to do with the meta of hitters. So when these cards released, specifically Bumgarner, a lot of people's lineups were right-handed heavy because of the collection rewards of Mays, Hornsby, and Pudge, as well as Frank Thomas being the best shortstop in the game, and so on. So I really think left-handed pitchers weren't in a good spot earlier in the year, but I think that has shifted a lot. And so relatively, these left-handed pitchers are starting to become more prevalent in the meta, because people are now running Gehrig at first base, they're running King Griffey Jr., a lot of Brian McCann at catcher. So I think left-handed pitchers are kind of in a much better spot than they were before, and David Price and Madison Bumgarner are some of the best left-handed pitchers in the game. And then at the bottom of Tier 2, I have Oral Hershiser, still good after all these months. And then the new John Lester that came out, I do think he's good. I don't think he's as good as Price and Bumgarner, but the new John Lester is really fun to pitch with, and would still consider him Tier 2. So as I said in the last video, in general, the way you would want to form your rotation is ideally you'd have all 4 of the Tier 1 guys, and then you just fill in the 5th spot with whatever you prefer out of the Tier 2 guys, since they're generally relatively the same power level. And so you would just look at preference there. If you wanted to sub out Seaver too for one of the guys in Tier 2, I wouldn't blame you. But I do think that Kershaw, Wainwright, and Feller are the 3 guys that you must have in your rotation if you're looking for the best possible rotation. So down to Tier 3, I put the new Ron Guidry from Sig Moments there. Haven't tried him, but not generally impressed with his pitch repertoire, and slider primary is not great on this year's game for starting pitchers. So we'll see how he does. Like I said, I haven't tried him. I did try the Cole Hamels, wasn't very impressed, had a very hard time getting right-handed hitters out, so that's why he's in Tier 3. And then moving down to Tier 3, a couple of big names here, namely Lefty Grove, who was for sure Tier 1 or Tier 2, pushing Tier 1 in the last tier list, all the way down to Tier 3. I always kind of thought of Lefty Grove as a gimmick pitcher. His stuff is not good. He's kind of just a guy that would throw meat up to the plate and get bailed out by his per nines, mostly his 99 home runs per nine, which is perfect, I think. I think that's one of the stats that can't go to 100. But yeah, in my opinion, he's just left-handed Nolan Ryan now. He's going to get absolutely shellacked on every difficulty because PCIs are going to be huge on All-Star, and you're going to be playing good players on Legend who are just going to not be fooled by anything that he throws. So really down on Lefty Grove, wouldn't even consider him for the rotation nowadays. One of the biggest guys affected by the home runs per nine changes for sure. And then down to Tier 3 as well, the 99 Chris Sale, which is really a bummer because he's selling for so many stubs and he looks like so much fun to pitch with. But in general, just from having faced him a bunch and from having seen people use him, it's very hard to pitch with the card because the circle change kind of floats. It's hard to throw for strikes. The slider has a ton of movement, which is actually a downside at times because, once again, it's hard to throw strikes. I find people generally just sitting on fastball when they face Chris Sale, and it's honestly a pretty good strategy because it's so hard to throw his off-speed for strikes without getting it blasted over the fence, kind of the same way that Seaver is. So pretty disappointing, but Chris Sale down to Tier 3. And now we'll move on to the bullpen. So some changes here as well. I reformatted Tier 1 because I wanted to get a point across in that I think there are 3 relievers in the game currently that are far and away better than any of your other options and should be in your bullpen no matter what, assuming you have the stubs to do so. So those 3 guys are Kenley Jansen, Billy Wagner, and Sergio Romo. I had some people comment on the last tier list asking why I think Romo is Tier 1, and I explained it very well in his card review, so go check that out over there. But I think Sergio Romo is easily a top 3 bullpen arm in the game. And then the other guys in Tier 1, haven't tried him yet, but I'm almost positive the 96 Raleigh Fingers is going to be a Tier 1 card. He was just released in the headliners with Jose Reyes. The card just looks insane. I actually don't know how it's only a 96 overall. Every single stat is good, including walks per 9 and control. He's got the same pitches, much better hits per 9, and he actually has 37 stamina, which is pretty good. You can get 2 or 3 innings out of him before he gets into the yellow energy. Card looks sick. Wade Davis in Tier 1, who I have tried, for sure can tell you he's a Tier 1 reliever. That card is sick as well. Great speed differential on his 3 fastballs. Secret cutter 4-seam, and his changeup is pretty good as well. Also much easier to pitch with analog with his delivery this year. Not sure why, but I'm locating everything really well. Moving up to Tier 1, 97 Dennis Eckersley. I've always been pretty high on Eckersley, and he's been chilling in Tier 2, but the reason I moved him up to Tier 1 in this tier list is because I think control, especially out of the bullpen, is especially important in this meta. Like I said earlier, the way that you're going to get outs is through weak contact and hitting your spots. This is especially important late in games when you're trying to protect leads or keep the game close when you're behind. So Eckersley has some of the best control stats out of any reliever in the game. He also has a great pitch repertoire and someone that's very easy to throw strikes with and get weak contact. So moving up to Tier 1 because of the patch changes, Dennis Eckersley. Couple guys moving down to Tier 2. Want to start off with Andrew Miller. Just want to preface by saying I do not think Andrew Miller is bad at all. I think Andrew Miller is a great card. I just had him in Tier 1 before, which by my definition would mean you pretty much have to have him in your bullpen. I no longer hold that belief about Andrew Miller. I think Billy Wagner is the only undebatable lefty in the game. And then for your other 2 or 3, or for your other 1 or 2 lefties in the bullpen, I think it's really a toss-up. I think Miller and Chapman are about the same in power level. and they're both slightly ahead of Zach Britton. So if you have to run 3 lefties, I would still go Wagner, Chapman, Miller, but if you're running 2 lefties, I actually prefer Chapman over Miller at this point in the game because he's a little more deceptive and his stuff is just generally better. But don't get me wrong, I still think Andrew Miller is a great card, just not completely necessary, if that makes sense. And then the big one here, moving down a tier, is 98 Eric Gagne. When I tried this card, I gave him the best review, and I still think the card is insane. There's just one problem with Eric Gagne, and it's the level of competition around him. So there are so many good right-handed relievers in the game right now, specifically Romo and Davis, who are both like cheap to free. You can get both of them for like 60,000 stubs total. I just can't justify having a right-handed reliever in my bullpen that costs 400,000 stubs. Gagne just costs an insane amount of stubs, and I don't even think he's technically necessary for the bullpen anymore with how saturated the right-handed reliever market has gotten over the last month of the game cycle. So moved him down to tier 2 mostly because of his price. You can do so much on this game with 400,000 stubs besides having a right-handed reliever that's on par, if not slightly worse, than some of the other guys that you can get for way cheaper. So that was the biggest change. I also reordered the right-handed relievers in tier 2 to kind of indicate who I think is the best out of the bunch. So I still think Eric Gagne is the best tier 2 right-handed reliever. Obviously the card's insane. I got Goose at number 2, Percival at number 3, Kimbrel at number 4. The old Raleigh Fingers from Team Affinity, still good at tier 2. Raleigh Fingers cards are just good. And then finally Rob Nen. So that's it for the pitchers. I hope you guys can understand where I'm coming from in reordering these tiers with the patches, with the patch changes. I hope what I'm trying to get across is coming through to you guys. We'll end the tier list with the couple slides that we ended last time, but I just want to take the time to say thank you guys for watching this. And if you have any questions, debates, you want to ask me something or argue with me on something, please feel free to drop a comment. I respond to almost every comment that I get on these videos. So really, if you have anything to say about this that you want to hear my opinion on, please feel free to drop it below. I do not mind at all. In fact, I welcome it. So finally, the last 3 slides, we're just going to go over the best team possible that I think in the game. This is the best team that I think you can get. Pretty much the same as before. Like I usually say with the outfielders in tier 1. Tier 1 outfielders are mostly preference. So the guys that I prefer are Cobb, Gwynn, and Mays. But really you can pick pretty much anyone from the tier 1 list. The only changes here is I got Chipper Jones in at third base for George Brett. Obviously Chipper Jones looks insane. Probably the best third baseman in the game. And then on the bench, I replaced Al Kaline with Vlad Guerrero just because I think as far as a bench player, I think Vlad Guerrero is way better than Al Kaline because he's a better hitter. So looking at the rotation and bullpen, I replaced Chris Sale with Tom Seaver and Corey Kluber with Zach Greinke. That's just going off the tier list of starting pitchers that I listed earlier. And as far as the bullpen, roughly the same, but Wade Davis, Raleigh Fingers taking the place of Eric Gagne and Troy Percival, and then the same 3 lefties there. So the best budget lineup that's possible without having any XP in the game. I may take this slide off for the next tier list because it's becoming a recurring theme that most of the best budget players in the game are from the SIG team moments because they're all like 96 or higher and they're all free. So this may become a little redundant, or I might revise it in the next one. But for right now, not a lot of changes. Obviously, Torrey Hunter replaced in right field with Vlad Guerrero because Vlad Guerrero is insane for a free card. And then Adrian Gonzalez replaces Keith Hernandez because he's about the same power level and also free. And then Pee Wee Reese replacing Dante Bichette on the bench. Everything else stays roughly the same. And then this is my current squad. I'm pretty stubborn. I haven't changed a lot. As you can see, everything's pretty much white except for the bullpen. But there's definitely some debate to be had about some of the guys on my team. I think when I get Vlad Guerrero on the main account, I will replace Matt Williams with him. He's just a generally better right-handed pinch hitter. And then I'm also looking at Dawson, who I forgot to include on the outfielders somehow. Let's go back. Someone's probably already typed the comment. How did I forget Andre Dawson, guys? Anyway, he would be orange and he'd be in tier 1 right here. Can't believe I did that, but it happened. I do think Dawson is going to be tier 1. He's pretty much had a great swing the entire length of MLB The Show the last 3 years. So I think he's going to be pretty good. And so what I was going to say is I'm looking at replacing K-Line with maybe Guerrero or Dawson, given how many reps I can get or how good I think the card is. So otherwise, I kept Kluber and Blyleven in the rotation just because I like pitching with them, but you could definitely make an argument for replacing these guys with the guys in tier 2, like I said. I haven't put Seaver in yet just because I haven't gotten to 300 stars. That's the only reason. And then for the bullpen, the only thing that's changed is I've replaced Gagne and Eckersley with, I've replaced Gagne with Davis, and I've replaced a lefty, Andrew Miller, for a righty and Raleigh Fingers. I always say running 5 righties, 2 lefties, or 4 righties, 3 lefties is preference. I just currently prefer 5 righties and 2 lefties. So that's going to do it for the tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, if you have anything to say, drop it in the comments below. I will read it. The next one will probably come out a month from now after I've tried all the new cards. Definitely the 8th inning bosses and the finest cards. Some of them will be on here, so look out for that. Like I said, if you don't follow my channel, please subscribe. I do a lot of card reviews and general game tips, so that's what you'll find on my channel. And I'll see you guys next time. Alright, thanks. Peace.